Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets, where we give you the strategies, mindsets, and frameworks to building your own six, and dare I even say, seven-figure coaching business. I am, of course, your host, the Road Dog, with none other than the man, the myth, the king of the Dolphins, returns once again, Karl Bryan. Shoots. Welcome back.
Yo, Road Dog. How are you doing, my brother? What's happening, man?
I am, as they say, living the dream, my friend. Living the dream. Sleeping like a baby. Waking up every 2 hours crying. Not a big deal.
There you go. Been there, done that, my brother. Been there, done that.
Dude, I love that when people say sleeping like a baby. It's like, are you one of those annoying parents that they, your baby actually slept through the night because the rest of us don't like you? Like, it's brutal. Brutal. What's going on with you? Give me a little nugget as to the wheelings and dealings and the inside of Karl Bryan.
Well, buddy, I'm just so knee deep in AI. It's freaking scary. Again, love-hate relationship, but it's all good. Cool things happening. Also trying to work on a little bit of, personal development and keeping my own mindset in check. This world, it's a pretty crazy place right now, my brother. Pretty crazy place. I don't need to explain that, but
No, you don't.
anywho, but always
Yeah, it's tough, right? When you're surrounded by negativity or even negative people around you, it's tough to do that. But hey, you know what? Actually, while we're on that topic, you're always kind of, like, again, in the past, we've gone over mistakes business coaches, sort of make, and some of the sort of the bigger lies that we've heard over the years, like certainty. Why don't you give us something on the personal development, like mindset front? You got anything there for us?
go. Yeah, I got a few, bud. So personal, yes. Okay, so maybe just frame. We have talked a little bit about like certainty. That's something you want to be a little bit careful with. You try to drive yourself to too much certainty. Your happiness will basically be derived from how much uncertainty you can handle in your life. So you try to make things certain. I think that can be a little bit challenging. And that is something that's been screamed from the mountaintops. But so if you said personal development, what would I say? Like what they'll say, your thoughts. I'm trying to think of how to word this. Like, your thoughts change your life, right? Let's put that in quotations. I'm going to dare say the answer to that is a hard no. It sounds impressive, would make a great title for a great book, probably a book out there titled it. But the reason that's wrong is that your mindset is not the bottom, let's call it a rung on a ladder, right? Your mindset is multiple steps up. So like, what is it? Your mindset is built on the top of your beliefs and values. Your beliefs and values are built on the top of your identity. And then your identity is built on the top of stories you've been telling yourself about what is true, what is real, what is right, who you are as a person, and what you deserve, very importantly. So maybe what I should do, like, if you built a ladder to improve your mindset, as opposed to say, okay, my thoughts are going to change my life, I would go to rung number one at the bottom, and I would go, who are you? Answer that, define it, right? And again, define it with a pen and paper, improve it over time as you evolve, because the person you are today is not the person you were last year or the year before that, or certainly, hopefully, right? As a business coach, as a business consultant, as somebody that doing what we do for a living, you're evolving at a pretty reasonable pace. So a person, like, what are you? You're a person solving big problems for a select group of people. Okay, so let's just go 90% of businesses fail. Well, you're a person, who you are is a person that solves that for your local business community. And how are you going to do that? You're going to do that through an operating system that can be installed in a systematic way, right? But number one, bottom rung, who are you? And then we go up one level and we go, what do you deserve? And I can tell you this, limiting beliefs will absolutely crush you here. But what is it that you deserve? Do you deserve a lot? Do you deserve a little bit? Do you have more than you currently deserve? Self-sabotage will kick in. But rung number 2 is what do you deserve? Rung number 3, so what is right? Right? Is it right to have good man? If you live in Canada, you almost by default have really good manners. Sorry is like the national word, right? So you'll see a Canadian parent will have a child without good manners, and that normally will not go over very well, right? So again, good, having good manners, is that what's right? Maybe it's freedom of speech, maybe it's the right to bear arms. But what do you believe to be right? So that would be the next rung, and then the next rung would be what is true, right? What is truth? Like, is life a zero-sum game? So when I win, they lose, and when they win, I lose. I must make them lose. This approach won't get you very far, right? You got to create win-win frameworks for yourself and for your clients. But the truth is, a lot of people by default, they have got a little bit of a zero-sum game going, where if they win, somebody else is losing, and self-sabotage can also be the end result of that, right? But what is true? And then really importantly, stories that you tell yourself. I am overweight. I am not enough. People take love away from me when I don't give them what they want. So what do? You become a people pleaser, right? But stories that you tell yourself, you've got to be telling yourself powerful stories, not the opposite, not stories that disempower you. And then, so I don't know what rung we're at, 4 or 5. Next would be your identity. That would be the level up. And then 7 would be beliefs and values. And then the next one would be your mindset, which is kind of where we started a minute ago, right? So who are you? What do you deserve? What is right? What is truth? What is true? What stories are you telling yourself? What's your identity? What are your beliefs and values? And then what's your mindset? I think that could probably be built into a flywheel, but anyways, think about that. But Road Dog, what I would take away from that, as opposed to, my thoughts can change my life. 2 big questions that I'd be asking yourself is, who are you? What do you deserve? And then what are the stories that you tell yourself around it? So spend your time thinking about what you want, thinking about who you want to be and where you want to go, opposed to thinking about what you're fearful of. Superpower in that. But I would say, Shoots, that is, you got to realize that those thoughts are multiple levels up. And there's some foundational stuff that I would direct you towards. I would direct you towards before I'd be going, oh, okay, let's just change those thoughts, because there's too many stories and too many truths ingrained below that make that a less than, you know what I mean? Like, you don't solve the problem because you don't go solve the real problem. That's what I'm trying to say. There you go, Sheets. That's what I got, man.
Okay, well, I don't think I have a choice. You've backed me into a corner, my friend. So let's get right into it. The moment of Zen. That was very Zen-like. So we got it. Let's keep the train on the tracks. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Look, what did I just say? Think about the things that you want and who you want to be versus what you're fearful of. I think the place to start is you've got to beat your fear. Your fear just robs you of success. All religions have one thing in common. They get a lot of differences, but they all have one thing in common. That is, I'm going to say 3 words: do not fear. I think that those words are written 365 times in the Bible, right? So make a list of things that you fear. And then, are they really worth worrying about? Because remember, 90% of what you worry about, guess what? Never comes true. Don't take my word for it. Use your critical thinking skills, reverse engineer some of the things that you've been fearful of over the last week, the last month, the last quarter, the last year, and tell me, did they come true? And with ridiculous predictability, they did not. What were you doing? You were worrying about something that didn't happen, and that took away your superpower, right? Speaking of a superpower, like, use optimism as your superpower. You can't be optimistic while you're fearful, right? So you're not doing it wrong. You're just at the stage where others pack it in. You're at the stage where others quit, right? So the solution, don't quit, pause. Like professional athletes, they work for like 6 to 7 months a year for a reason. What do? They take a break. They take pause. So if you're feeling down, you're feeling overwhelmed, you feel like you're not getting to where you want to be, maybe you're feeling a little bit depressed, what do? In fact, I tell you what you should do. You should watch the movie Stutz. which is a very famous movie about a famous psychiatrist, Phil Stutz. What he says is work on your life force. All right. What's your life force? He was basically frustrated because people would come in with deep depression and real issues that he wanted to be able to solve in real time and quick. Well, what he found is that he'd send them away without any progress. Like, why? Because they needed multiple sessions to be able to help in the traditional psychology slash counseling ways that he was taught, right? So the way that he was taught and the way that he was, told to counsel, it wasn't solving the problem initially. So what did he do? He created something called the life force. It's literally right in the movie. And he said 100% of the people would leave feeling, better about themselves, less depression, less anxiety, less of what they came in with, less PTSD. They ultimately, they got progress literally in one session, right? So you say, what did he do? Just draw a pyramid. Okay. And then you have 3 levels, right? So the bottom level, the bottom third is relationship with your body. Level 2 is relationship with other people, think friends, spouse, kids, colleagues, etc. And then level 3, which is the highest level, is relationship with yourself, right? So, and what are level 1 solutions? Like, I don't know, workout, go for a walk, jog, lift some heavy weights, sleep well, right? Level 2, call a friend, plan a date, go for beers with your buds, take your wife out on a date, take your daughter out on a daddy-daughter date. Right? Level 3, spend time in nature, right? Like camping, fishing, journaling, like writing to yourself, setting goals, setting targets, thinking on paper, like we talked about last week. Make a plan. Always be truthful. Remember, if you lie to yourself, you don't follow through on your word, you lose trust in yourself. And what does that do? That ruins your intuition. Imagine having something so powerful as intuition and you don't realize that you've been ruining it because you haven't been truthful with yourself. You haven't followed through on your word. Your word didn't mean, your word wasn't gospel within yourself to yourself, right? So always tell the truth, starting with, you, what am I trying to say? Me, myself, and I, whatever, like with yourself, right? But it's always the fundamentals, right? Like your client needs to do the exact same. So like, life force, is that like revolutionary? Is that something that you haven't heard before? Absolutely not. But I can tell you one of the most powerful psychiatrists in the world literally made a movie about the guy. This is the foundation. This is where he went. This is what he did. And obviously he was dealing with some people with some very real, very now problems, right? But again, always the fundamentals. I don't know, shoots like your goal is to have a great life, right? It's not money, it's not wealth, it's not houses, it's not cars, although they might factor into it and they might not, but define a great life, right? Remember, don't do it in your head, do it on paper. And if you want to improve the present moment, make a big goal for yourself, make a big target for yourself that you have to reach for. Really push yourself. Remember, Road Dog, you finish all the podcasts off with 3 words: progress equals happiness. There's real magic in that. And in fact, Dan Sullivan, very famous business coach, been around forever and forever and a day. He says, what's his quote? It's something to the effect of, to make your present better, you need to make your future bigger. And I believe those to be really, really wise words. To make your present better, you need to make your future bigger. So what's your big future? What is it that drives you? And remember, and this can't be $10,000 a month, 50 grand a month, 100 grand a month, right? Although that could be the sandbox and that could be the starting point because you got to get there. But a really big future involves other people. You need to be impacting people in a positive way, and the money will flow from there. Also, also a great way to accomplish what it is that you want to accomplish. And this is the words of the great Charlie Munger, may he rest in peace. But he says, do the inverse, right? So rather than write down what a great life is, although I think that's a really good exercise and you should define it, but he'll say, write down what a terrible life would look like for you, right? Being unfit, being inflexible, overweight, unhealthy, eating ice cream at 10 p.m., drinking alcohol at 10 p.m. every night. Remember, all diets work until 7 p.m., right? Not being truthful with yourself, not impacting the world the way that you set out, not impacting your kids, not having a great relationship with your kids, not having a great relationship with your spouse, not making the call, not hiring the staff member, not hiring the lead generator, not doing the event, not setting up the podcast, not doing the YouTube videos, I don't know, not learning AI, not using AI to be able to make your life easier, not spending time in nature, not camping, not fishing, not enjoying the beach, not booking that trip to Mexico for you and your wife, for you and your husband, you and your family, you and your kids, right? And going on that holiday. Maybe it's not getting your kids or grandkids to Disneyland while they're young enough to really enjoy it. So, just avoid and at all costs avoid self-sabotage. When you do the inverse, I mean, the sabotage is something that you've done, I've done, Road Dog's done, your clients have absolutely done. So again, what brings that? What do you do when you're self-sabotaging? You procrastinate. You let self-doubt own you. You stay in analysis paralysis. You begin things and then don't finish things. Remember, you'll be remembered for what you refuse to give up on. You're going to be remembered in life for what you refuse to give up on. The question is, what do you refuse to give up on, right? Those stats that 90% of local businesses fail, is that a stat that you were willing, is that a hill that you're willing to die on? Okay, let's go all in on that, right? Make that your big future that makes the present better, right? And certainly knowing, and so what I'm going over here, these are things that you need to do, but then you're not doing it. How does that make you feel? We know that brings the depression, that brings the anxiety, that brings the restlessness. Anyway, shoot. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say, bud. What do you think?
Yeah, it's good. It's interesting, right? When because you always make that comment, and I'd like you to kind of maybe go on to that. You always say your biggest weakness is your greatest strength turned up too loud. Like you always say that.
Yeah, it's. I remember you asked me about, the billionaire question was a few weeks ago now. Like anything taken to extreme is likely bad. You're too masculine, you're too feminine, you're too motivated, too soft, too competitive, too nice, too assertive, too passive. Um, so yes, your greatest weakness is likely your greatest strength turned up too loud. Especially like in an AI world, it's so much more important to be learning than knowing, right? Learning has got to be, well, most people are one letter away from greatness where they're worried about what they earn and they should be worried about what they learn. But certainly in an AI world that is moving very, very quick, you've got to be bought into learning, not knowing. But then don't fall into what's the greatest weakness. If your greatest strength is your ability to learn, you might fall into that analysis paralysis. At some stage, you got to stop collecting dots. And you need to start connecting dots, right? Stop collecting them and start connecting them. So learning over knowing all day long, things are moving real quick. Like there was shoots like I don't know all the ages, but there was the Stone Age, there was the agricultural age. I think it was distribution age, the information age, the digital age, and now we're obviously moving into the AI age. And something you're going to see, notice that all of the ages, quote unquote, they're all getting shorter and shorter in terms of period of time. So as AI moves in, you need to be dialed in on the learning. And I also, maybe I want to follow that up with, you want to be dialed in on learning, but also dialed in on implementing, right? So not just like the school, but from the real world application and problem solving. Remember, there's studying and then training. Studying is doing the course, watching the YouTube video, listening to this podcast. Training is doing it over and over and over and over again until it becomes instinctual. Like what we're doing right now, like we just built a business coaching dojo. We've got 21 trained AI agents. Like imagine having Steve Jobs beside you when you're thinking about innovation with your client, or having me beside you when you're trying to come up with a really good market dominating position. A market dominating position is a USP, a unique selling proposition, but it's more powerful in that it solves the biggest problem for the ideal client, right? So think no results, no fee, on time, on budget, these sorts of things. You're solving the biggest problem for the ideal client. Well, again, imagine having me in your ear every time you're coming up with an MDP, or maybe it's the state's most impressive accountant sitting right beside you or in your ears. You're trying to control costs, trying to cut costs with your client. Only it's about 10x better. Because remember, if your client has 20% net margins and you make them $1, they keep how much? 20 cents. You save them $1, they keep how much? And the answer is 100 cents. So imagine having it, again, the state's most impressive accountant sitting right beside you as you were going through your landscaping clients' books to be able to find, low-hanging fruit and really obvious places where they could cut back, where they could eliminate. Pretty powerful stuff. But anyway, so we're knee deep in that. And again, and we're not, studying, yes, but training, just doing it over and over and over again, right? Like literally before this podcast, where was I? I was knee deep in AI. So anyway, shoots, that's but yeah, your greatest strength.
Yeah,
Or
I
your
got a question for you around that,
greatest,
Carl, because if you're saying like, okay, well, you've got 21 trained AI agents and they're gonna tell you what your MDP or what your accounting or where to cut cost. Where does that leave business coaches? Like, is this sort of like, yeah, sorry, shoots, you're done. Go find, I don't know, become a street performer or something. Like, where does this leave? Where does this leave?
yeah.
Business coaches?
It what it does is it allows the business coaching. Ultimately, it's turbo for a car, it's gasoline for the fire, right? Believe me, the business owners, you speak to the average landscaper, the average butcher, baker, candlestick maker. I mean, they hardly know what ChatGPT is yet, right? Like, and yes, this is going to evolve and this is going to speed up. There is no doubt, right? But that said, no, it's kind of the exact opposite, where we are now going to be able to implement this stuff. Because remember, we have an operating system with 12 specific. Well, we have a deep dive 40, and then we've got the jumpstart 12. But like the jumpstart 12, the foundation, again, it's the foundation of the biggest companies in the world. You get, if you have a company that did $500,000 gross revenues, they have 10% net margins. Translation, they have $50,000 of earnings, $50,000 of profit. If you increase that business by 2% in all 12 areas. Don't quote me on these exact numbers, but it's like $70,000 a newfound profit. You got to be the worst business coach in the world to only be able to get 2% in controlling costs, 2% in raising prices, a market dominating position, a USP that just brings in 2% more business and makes them, 2% a better company, joint ventures, getting a really bad joint venture, creating a bundle like the Happy Meal, create a really bad one. So basically, and then by the way, you get $70,000 newfound profit. And if you do 5% in all 12 areas with that exact same company with $50,000 of earnings, it's $213,000 of extra profit on the back of 5% gains. And again, you got to be pretty bad at this stuff to only get a 5%, to only move the needle 5% in each of the 12 areas. Why? Because the business owner is not thinking like this, right? They're thinking about all their problems. They're, the forest through the tree stuff. They're staring at the tree. So yeah, shoots. It's gasoline and turbo on steroids for business coaches. That's what it is right now.
Okay, so I'm gonna again, this might be a bit of a controversial subject, but obviously, the Charlie Kirk thing happened. Geez, was it over a week ago now? I just want to ask you if you want to have any thoughts in terms of anything you want to say about that.
Yeah, I got to be honest. This one got me. Didn't sleep too well. Couldn't stop scrolling. My wife, literally, she was like, "You need to walk away from this. You need to walk away." Like apparently, his wife and kids were just like feet away. And his young 3-year-old was scared by the big bang, the sound of the shot. And she went running towards her daddy, right? Like, oh my God, think about that for a minute. And I got to tell you, those texts from the kid, to his roommate, I don't know, I ain't going there, but that just feels ridiculous and borderline unbelievable. But let's not go there. I don't know, man. Like, I never knew too much about him or Turning Point USA prior to him getting shot. I don't know. The guy wasn't a concept, right? He was a passionate human being making moves, making waves, right? I looked into him a fair bit. In my opinion, he's an outstanding speaker, an outstanding debater. I'd be amazed if anybody could, debate that. But he had some provocative views, some of which, frankly, I don't necessarily align with. But he seemed to always do a pretty good job, a respectful job of just, debating. And in most cases, for what I could see, he was debating 18-year-olds and then he's using a framework. So he pretty much crushed them, right? So don't be too surprised by that. But I do align with the passion and the work ethic. He believed in what he said. That said, suicide, something near and dear to my heart. Amongst like men, it's up like 30 per young men, it's up around 30%, right? I just don't see how this is a good thing for young men on many levels. But what I think we want young men to be aspiring to, were not necessarily his views, but his moves, his actions, and his work ethic, right? So I'd hate to be pouring water on that. And that in some cases has gone in a really, really great direction. And that a lot of people are stepping up and saying, I want to, be a part of that. And then others, they're going to a darker place of the internet. And importantly, look, he was doing this stuff on university campuses, a great place to educate young people and allow them to hear differing viewpoints. He would invite them to agree or disagree. Differing viewpoints are critical to our society functioning properly. So what I do know, when violence is the answer, we've all lost. End of story. And just think of your opinion of the Middle East, right? They solve things with violence, and it's something you don't really give a second thought to. You just kind of shake your head, right? I feel like that's where we're going. Multiple assassination attempts on both sides, right? The magic trick is that they make us think left and right. It's anything but. It's us versus them. Our brains are wired to accept the frame of us versus them. Us is okay. It's safety. It's known. It's things we trust. And them is not okay, different, unfamiliar, threatening, things we can't trust. That's how our ancestors survived. And today, the people in charge weaponize it. They use terms like, have a look at it. I've seen this everywhere. It's they, it's the wealthy, it's the elites, it's the left, it's the right, it's the Democrats, it's the Republicans, it's the conservatives. Makes it easy to side with the narrative. And then they twist it using emotion like a knife and let your instincts kind of fill in the blanks. What happened? An enemy was then created. And powerful voices on TV and online repeat it, so people buy in, and your fear, your anger eliminate the need for facts, right? And then, I don't know, this, bit of a rabbit hole we could go on, and this is a horrible situation that I just did, it's just brutal on all levels, in my opinion. What would be the solution? One is you got to call it out, assuming you agree, and maybe you don't, and that's fine, right? But if you agree with what I just said, one is you got to call it out. And then two, you got to stop falling for it. Engagement equals enragement. You turn on your Facebook feed, your Instagram feed, and what you're going to see is, lunatics spewing craziness. It gets you enraged and it gets you engaged. It's not the people with your same opinion, right? So they're trying to rile you up. So you keep scrolling and keep thinking about it, keep coming back. What do they say? If it bleeds, it leads. Right. And he was also getting a little heavy and outspoken about Epstein and those that were involved. And again, critical thinking skills here. If you think Epstein killed himself, I don't know if you're using your critical thinking skills properly. Like the surveillance and the cameras shut off just at the moment where magically, he did himself in. It's like, come on, think of the powerful people he had information on, and just think about it for a minute. Again, using critical thinking skills, but without going there, but it's like, if I'm right, and I could be horrifically wrong, and I'm okay with that, right? But I've got my opinion, you've got yours, Road Dog has his, your client will have theirs, and it's all good. That's what keeps a society happy. If everybody just thought the exact same thing, it's like you ask an audience, who here likes surprises? They all put up their hand. Right. And this is a thing straight from Tony Robbins. And then he says, bullcrap. You like the surprises that you want. You don't like the surprises that you don't want, but you hear the word surprise and it has a positive connotation to it. Right. So I just say, don't fall for it. Call it out. The bottom line on Charlie, it's scary. It's sad. It's unacceptable. I don't want to give a lot of airtime to the shooter, but it's not surprising to me that this kid was in COVID lockdowns during a very important time in his development. That leads people to, online, into dark places online. That's a great place to get radicalized. It's scary and sad on many levels. I'll let you shoot. I pray for Charlie's wife. I pray for him. I pray for his wife. I pray for his young kids. I just think it's heartbreaking, brother. I think it's heartbreaking. That's all I can say.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. It is completely heartbreaking. You're mentioning Epstein. I'm like, gee, I hope Hillary Clinton isn't listening to this podcast. Just saying that. Anyways, let's get this back on track here. Just real quick, because we did actually have a question come in, and I want to end on a strong business note here. I think it's a very, very important question, and that is, give us an example of raising your price via added value.
Raising prices using added value. Well, Bezos get different direction. Bezos will say controlling costs is more about innovation than anything else, right? I would say the same thing about raising prices. So be innovative, embody your inner Steve Jobs, right? So think like contrast as an example. perception of price is 100% relative and can be influenced in a meaningful way, right? So people in China think made in China is garbage, right? They actually they buy more things made in Japan. And by the way, they love made in America, right? So Chinese companies, what do? They make things, bring them back to America, and then sell them back into China as made in the USA. Probably sounds a little bit ridiculous, but guess what? It works. But it's contrast, right? The problem is people spend no time altering the perception of their thing, their product, their service, their offering, etc. And what do small business owners do? Well, with ridiculous predictability, they create a zero-sum game, or a race to zero, actually is what I'm trying to say. They discount their prices, they crush their margins, and they get surprised when they're not hitting their revenue goals, their profit goals, the targets that you and they set out for themselves, right? So think of contrast this way. There's the thing, and then there's the perception of the thing, okay? So maybe better said, value is very subjective. So like a glass elevator is far more acceptable when the elevator is slow. Right? Wine tastes better when what? When the bottle is heavy, right? You clean your car, what happens? It drives better. You clean your office, what happens? You think more clearly. I can tell you beer tastes better out of a tall, slim bottle. And look at the most expensive beers, and guess what you're going to find? They come in tall, slim bottles, which are more expensive to manufacture, but that's how they do it. That's how they separate it, right? So, and the football game, it's got significantly more energy when the stands are full. And by the way, that's regardless of maximum capacity. So it could be a stadium that fits 5,000 people that's chock-a-block, can't fit another person in there. The energy is awesome. You take those 5,000 people and you put them in a stadium where it fits 20,000 people and it lacks energy, right? So again, but you got a stadium that fits 20,000 people and you fill it with 20,000 people, it's got more energy, as well as music, right? Music is better when it's loud. The more the school costs and the more difficult it is to be accepted into it, guess what? The higher the perception of the degree. Think Harvard, think MIT, think Stanford. You want to buy a Ferrari, what do you got to do? You got to put a non-refundable deposit down. And then what do you got to do? You got to wait a year to be able to, get your Ferrari to roll up. Rolls-Royce, what do? They don't attend car shows. They exhibit at yacht and aircraft shows where the onlookers can afford their cars. Again, gives them contrast, right? Ford are out in the suburbs with hundreds and hundreds of trucks on display. Tesla's downtown with 4 cars in total in a very small little showroom. And what do? You got to order your car off of the computer. Right? Apple, they present their products like they're $100,000 watches. Look, small business example for our coaches. I used to run my business seminars at the penthouse of one of the most expensive hotels in town, significantly more expensive for me, but worked a trait. And at the end of the end result was significantly more exciting financially than when I did it at Humpty Dumpty's. Probably pretty obvious, but what I was doing is I was leveraging the penthouse and leveraging the prestige of the hotel to provide contrast to my brand. What did people think? They thought, gosh, this guy must really know what he's talking about if he's at the penthouse of one of the most expensive hotels in town, right? And they're not thinking, wow, this guy must have spent a fortune on this room, although they may or may not have been thinking that. But what they're doing is they're giving me, they're associating my brand with the penthouse and the prestigious hotel, right? So question would be, how are you and your clients using contrast to position their events, their products, their services more powerfully? And I would dare say that they are not, and that would be a mistake. Taking the exact same thing and presenting it in a slightly different, more powerful way can change the perception in a very, very meaningful way. So that's what I would say, Shoots. But again, just controlling costs is more about innovation, is what Jeff Bezos would say. So I want you to think about raising prices as being about innovation as much as anything else. In some cases, it's just a matter, like, what does McDonald's do? Like McDonald's, they don't, you look at the price of the Big Mac over the last 50 years, and guess what you're going to see? Every year, come hell or high water, it goes up. How much does it go up by? But it only goes up by a very small amount. The magic is that it's systematized. It's about 1.7% per quarter, which is over 7% per year. So and you don't notice 1.7%. It's pennies, right? You hardly notice. And the next thing you know, 3 years later, you're going to McDonald's and you're like, how the heck is the Big Mac this much more expensive? Or how's it this expensive? And guess what? They get away from it. And apparently, if you look at their, you look at the value of the company, it is working out pretty well. So and by the way, Shoots, the chiropractor, the dentist, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, guess what they are not doing? They are not increasing their prices on a regular basis. Guess what they're also not doing? They're not controlling their expenses as revenues go up and the business becomes significantly busier. They start doing those two things. Like if you have a company watch this, if you've got a company that has 10% net margins, if you increase their prices by 5% and then you decrease their costs by 5.5%, guess what you just did? You just doubled the profitability of the company. You didn't hire anybody. You didn't do a new Facebook ad campaign. You didn't do anything revolutionary. You didn't invent anything. You didn't, hire a bunch of new people, do a bunch more jobs. You just did the exact same thing with those two little tweaks, literally double their profits. You're a business coach. You're $2,000 a month, 24 grand a year. You're $5,000 a month. You're 60 grand a year. You go to the company and you do that. That's part of the Jumpstart 12. That's two areas of the 12 that are dialed in. Guess what? You just improved their business and most importantly, their profitability in a meaningful way almost instantly. And remember, profit is the domino that knocks over all the other dominoes, right? They got staffing issues, profit. They got retention issues, profit. They've got marriage issues at home, profit. Profit's a domino that knocks over all the other dominoes. So anyway, Shoots, I think that's a great question. And yeah, raising prices is something they should be doing, but doing it the McDonald's fashion and just adding 1.7% per quarter, that's one way of doing it. But if you start thinking Jeff Bezos and you start thinking innovation and thinking penthouses and, tall, slim bottles, etc., it could change things in a pretty meaningful way for your client. So that's my answer, Shoots. Actually, let me give you one more example. I used to work with a client many, many years ago, discount mortgages. What's the first thing that they said to me? I said, we bring in a really low caliber of client. I said, you think? I go, what do you think the problem might be? And I handed them back their business card and said, read that to me. They go, discount mortgages. I said, what do you think's going to happen here? Right? This thing needs to be platinum mortgages instead of discount mortgages. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to start attracting by default a higher level of client. Yes, you'll still get some broke folks, but you're also going to get some fantastic folks that are basically the demographic that you're trying to attract and the people that you ultimately want to be working with. One little slight change and they couldn't see it, right? It's forest through the trees, staring at the tree and couldn't see it. Crazy. So there you go, Shoots. That's my answer, bud.
I was just going to say with your, was it 5% and then 5 point whatever decrease? That's boring, man. That's not sexy. Nobody wants to do that. It's right. Like that's how it works. Yeah, people chase the sexy.
Brother. That is it. But again, you got to get your excitement by going skydiving. If you business done properly, business done ridiculously profitably, is boring as can be. If it's too exciting, I can tell you there's a problem there. Remember, new and next. Those two words have cost me literally millions of dollars. It's also studying versus training. I think we got something to Jumpstart 12. It's so simple. It's so cookie cutter. It's so easy to follow for you, the business coach, and so easy for them to follow the business owner. But you're right. It's boring, but that's the magic of it. That's why you can scale it. That's why you can work with, significant, dozens of clients as opposed to working with 12 and maxing out because you've got a system. So anyway, Shoots, but yeah, that's, you're right. It's boring. And hang on, studying versus training. Studying is learning it and understanding, say the Jumpstart 12, the operating system that can be installed. But the real magic is in the training. What's training? Doing it over and over and over and over and over again until it becomes instinctual. So that's the magic. And by the way, that's my business coaching dojo is going to do that on steroids for folks. So there you go, bud.
I would expect nothing else but for it to be on steroids, Shoots. On that note, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets on Steroids. I think we should rebrand. I'm just throwing that out there, just food for thought. Hey, if you're not on the inside getting access to the pre-show, you aren't getting Karl's daily emails, or you just want more information on how to build, grow, and scale your coaching company, do yourself the favor, folks. Visit focus.com and subscribe today. And also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please like and subscribe and also share with a fellow coach. hey man, we're just trying to get our message out to as many coaches and potential new coaches as possible, because as Karl mentioned earlier, that 90% failure rate, hey, we're trying to make our mark. While you're at it, leave us a review. That is it for another week. You heard him say it earlier, and I'm going to say it again. Remember, folks, progress equals happiness. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next episode.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.